This is Independent Voice, and I am Mame.
In today's video, I have yet another invited guest, Dr. Yene Assegid, all the way from Africa, will be joining us to continue having a discussion on the biography of Mr. Fouad. Happy to have you here today, Yene Assegid. She's been invited by, obviously, very well known by now, Mr. Ismael Fouad. I want to say good morning to both of you. Welcome back again. This chapter that we opened up with Mr. Fouad has continued. It's unraveling an interesting chapter in so many different ways. Without any further ado, please, Mr. Fouad, take a minute and introduce your guest.
Yes, good morning, Mame. Good morning, Yene. Indeed, very pleased to be here in Independent Voices medium. Today, yes, we have invited a dear friend of mine who goes by the name of Yene Assegid, whom I know since quite some time now. We have done the same school, Lycée Gabriel Mariam. She's also from Addis, Ethiopian by origin, Belgium now by nationality. She have done a lot in her life. She will be speaking about it. She have done also a PhD specializing in systems thinking and leadership. And with Mame, when we have wrapped up the biography that we produced a few months ago, we had discussed about how and where to take it further, especially in thinking about what kind of message we should give to the new generation, but also getting further the analysis that we had produced with the humanitarian activities and the perspective that Yene Assegid will be giving us is very important. It will maybe not the only video that we'll be recording with her, because the subject matter is very timely. So with this, I will give Yene the opportunity to say hello.
Thank you, Fouad. Thank you, Mame, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here at Independent Voice. I'm really honored to be with you to discuss all these interesting topics about systems thinking and leadership. So I'm very honored and looking forward to our conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me just say, just looking at you and looking at the background, I have to say, it just makes you want to go to Africa and move and live over there. I don't know why we don't do that, but it is absolutely beautiful. It's so green. It's so beautiful. Africa is just amazing. So thank you for giving us that look, bird's eye view into the world of Africa, where you can just sit outside, record this, and thank God for technology. Look what we're able to do. So I'm so happy you guys are here. This has become such an international conversation. So Yene is talking to us from Africa. Mr. Fouad is speaking to us from France. I'm in the US. Look at that. It can't get any better than that. So I'm so grateful. This is so much fun to do. With that said, though, I'm really excited. Mr. Fouad's biography is out there. People are listening to it. We have done a couple sessions just doing a wrap up and having a discussion with his friends and colleagues about what it really was like to witness some of the things that he talked about in his biography. Yene is somehow connected to some of the work that Mr. Fouad has done. She's also done some humanitarian work, but then she kind of veered to a different direction and done some interesting work. She's here to talk to us a little bit about what she's done, where she's been, how she ended up in Africa, but then she's also she's a national of Belgium. So I cannot wait to hear the interesting story behind you. Please take a moment, walk us through, and then we'll take it from there. Thank you so much once again for being here in Independent Voice.
Thank you, Mame, for the opportunity again. Once I had an interview when I was doing my PhD, and it was with a very high official, and they told me you have 15 minutes. And I was ready with my mic and everything. And he rolled in and he said, tell me a little bit about yourself. And there it goes for 45 minutes. So I'm always afraid when somebody says, introduce yourself, I get a bit of a shiver to say, how much do you want to say? But I'm going to give you a brief, just a brief round of where I come from. I like Mr. Fouad said, I'm born in Addis. I grew up in Addis until the age of 8 to 9 years old before we left when the revolution happened and my family went to Belgium. My life changed when we went to Belgium because until then, I thought I lived in a magical world full of laughter and mischiefs and fun. Our home was right next door to my grandmother's home. So we knew the whole neighborhood. There was so many people. It was just a lot of fun. And at that time, at the lycée, I was a straight D student with no excuses, D all the way. But that's because I was busy in the neighborhood. I was running small businesses. We were trading marbles. We were selling eggs, and it was just fun. And suddenly now we move because of the revolution. And many times when we discussed with Mr. Fouad, our generation people are those who have witnessed the life before the revolution and the life after. But we were not old enough to fully understand what it meant, but it has left a mark on us. So when we arrived in Brussels, it was a bit shocking, but you keep going because it's about survival. There's no blue sky anymore. You're different. As in Amharic, we say Faranjagar. I thought I was in the land of the Faranjuj, but I didn't realize that I was the foreigner now. Yeah, so it took me a while until I understood that actually I'm the foreigner and the rules are different. Yeah, you're not in your home country. You have to perform. You can't afford to make mistakes. You're not invited. You're not included. You're not you're a number. They might not know the difference between you and your sisters and your friends in school as long as all of you are from Africa. That's all it is. I'm exaggerating a bit, but this is the sense that it is. And of course, then, as a small child, my life kind of switched. I remember boarding the plane as a child. And now looking back, when I was looking back at this journey, I disembarked as a short adult. And I skipped from being 8, 9, 10 years old to passing adolescence and going into young adulthood, because now there's responsibility to help my family, help my sisters, study. And I switched immediately. The D's were forgotten and I became, I changed immediately and I had the top grades, but because now the priority was to study. But one thing that marked my life is this big inquiry of saying, but why do we have to leave? Why? I understand the situation was, there was civil war. Of course, we have to leave, and we're grateful that we were able to leave. But why? Why can I not travel because I want to, because I have a job, because I want to go on holiday? Why is it so many communities have to travel for safety? We have no choice. We don't have healthcare, education, security in our own countries. But why? And this why question is what led me from a very young age to understand that it's about the choices we make as individuals, how we lead our lives, how we lead our communities, our families, and it expands all the way to how we lead our nations, our organizations, and the greater planet. Yeah. So it's all seated in understanding leadership, practicing it, learning it, being a lifelong learner, and actually, walking our talk. It's easy to point fingers and to say, this is not working. Well, if it's not working, do something about it. Don't just sit there and don't tell me you can't do anything about it, because you can. You can do, everybody can do a little bit, and a little bit makes a difference. And this is what, for me, leadership is about. And this is what the lifelong learning, reflection, action and reflection to move forward and progress. Yeah. So I'm going to pause here before I go to 45 minutes.
I wish you would, because it's very engaging. You've taken us back to what it was like, or what it meant to actually be a child, have to be forced to leave a country. The difference between going to Faranjagar versus the reality itself. And look where you're at today. You've touched on some sensitive points. I'm sure a lot of people could relate to. The why question. Thank you so much. Because most of us lived through the why. For me, it happened just recently. When I lost my mom 3 years ago is when it hit me and say, why did I have to leave? People could say, you're lucky to have to leave at such a young age, and you had so much opportunity, this, that, and the other. I get it. Yes, we do. Yes, we have. And yes, we had, right? But then the question is, why did I have to live without my mom all these years? The why. So that's another show altogether, which I hope someday we get to talk about. But this is really, I know you gave us like the iceberg of what it is that you could say right now. I wish you would add more to it, but then maybe in the discussion, we'll force you to get into it. So I have a quick question for you. Your PhD is in systems thinking. Say a little bit more about that. What does that entail?
So the full title of the PhD is Transformation, Learning and Change, and it's founded in understanding systems thinking from a leadership perspective. What does leadership mean when we look at the whole, when we have a holistic view of the context of the parts, and how does it all work together? What are the leverage points to bring change in your own personal life, or in an organization, or in a nation? It's about understanding and seeing the anatomy of the reality that we're facing, and being able to identify where are the leverage points and how can we access the leverage points to achieve the change we want, assuming we know the change we want. At times, the challenge is that we want change, but we're not able to formulate clearly and precisely what change do you exactly want, and are you willing to invest yourself to achieve that change? A lot of times we wish things, but we're not willing to put in the resources or the effort or the commitment. So when you work with systems thinking and look at the principles of transformational leadership, it's really about looking at the components and saying, is there coherence? Are we going somewhere, or is the machine working? Or is the engine rolling or not? So it's really about understanding the anatomy to put out a plan of action in a very simple way. And the more simple the plan of action is, the more successful the initiative is going to be. In a nutshell, that's what it's about.
A huge thing. One can talk about all day, but I picked up on a couple of things, and I'll just mention them and maybe save the questions for some, maybe down the road in our conversation. Is the system working? Is the machine working? Trust me, if one part of the system isn't working, or the machine, one little thing isn't working, the entire thing isn't going to work. It might seem as though it is, but it isn't operating in the manner in which it's expected to operate. So without stepping into my own areas of interest, tell us how you know and how you've met Mr. Fouad. He's the reason for all of us to be here. His biography, like I said, has opened up chapters after chapters for a lot of people. If you could take us back to how you've met, where you know him, and the different work you guys have engaged in together, that would be awesome.
Thank you, Mame. And so I tell you, crossing paths with my friend and my brother, Fouad, is a blessing, has been a blessing, and will always be a blessing. We met in, I think if I'm right, 97 or 96, when I had returned to Ethiopia, and I was looking at joining Médecins Sans Frontières. And he was one of the individuals that I had a conversation with to learn about what they're doing. And I remember I just went in his office and we talked, and there was not even a, how do you call it, a pause time. We just went into deep conversation on the spot. And it's been like that ever since all these years, isn't it? Yeah. And so I ended up joining MSF Belgium, and we were running at that time the first program for HIV/AIDS prevention in the red light district in Addis. It was a brand new program back then. If you remember, we hardly talked about HIV/AIDS, let alone talk about women surviving from prostitution. And so it was quite taboo. And we had to start a program. And it was myself and another colleague who unfortunately is no longer with us, Betty. And we just started by going down to the red light district to get this program going. And many years later, we had built a network of over 5,000 women. We had amazing programs of conversation, of changing lives, yeah, it was just fantastic. So this is what I did with MSF. Over to you.
See, this is what I'm really liking. You're just giving us like a little taste of what it is that we want more of. So I'll get to that. I'll get to that. I'm going to let Mr. Fouad interject for a minute, and I'll get back to asking you a couple questions. Please take the floor, Mr. Fouad.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. No, I'm so happy and humbled with whatever was said so far. And yes, ma'am, Yene, it was in 1996, and you were young as I was, and when you popped in, I thought a storm has got into my office, you know. But that was the type of people I loved also, because it was engaging, and it has triggered a lot of discussions, etc. And what I remember about those periods when you started right away was, as you rightly said it, working with the young ladies who were doing this for their survival and the survival of their family. They were not doing it only for them. And for people like us who were going down there to work with them, humanizing them, the population, at the population level, not only it was taboo, it was even like, you did all these studies to go down there and work with this kind of people, you know, they were not even considered. But then after this initial project, which became a huge one later, with human beings being revealed, and even talking about that taboo disease in the open, had taught many others not to fear anymore, had taught many others to go and have their treatment, etc., etc. And so it was not only changing their lives, but it was also changing the discourse within the nation, at least at this level, and then we expanded it elsewhere. And that I remember very vividly. And the second thing I wanted also to interject on is that when Mame asked about the systems thinking, yes, you explained it very well, and from the perspective of leadership. But today, when we will be discussing, we will be elaborating further on this, because the systems thinking is a theory, as you know better than me, that can be adapted and adopted in many other work environments, life environments, developmental projects, etc., etc. And as you rightly said, it is this about the system. And the simplest way to get going this discussion is to think about our body. You see, so you can take the brain, you can take the heart, you can take anything, the arms, the legs. They are part and parcel of us, and that is what constitutes our life. But that life would not be only if you take the leg apart, or the arms apart, or the brain apart. They don't function apart. And that also applies to the current situation in our country, where we find people are wanting to take that Ethiopia we know, the beautiful Ethiopia we know, part and parcel. No, it doesn't work that way. It's only united that we can keep that beautiful nation ongoing. And I yield my mic.
Thank you, Fouad, also for your, for how you remember it. And I forgot to mention one colleague who was equally a blessing, and it's my colleague, Dr. Philippe Legrand, who actually really enabled this program to take off. So it was myself, Philippe, and Betty. And this is who started this wonderful journey of working with these amazing women. And like you said, it was about humanizing them. I could feel, you know, sometimes when you have empathy and you see somebody for their humanity, for the divine in them, not for what they do. And this is what changed everything in our relationship and in our capacity to bring them the kind of service that they needed. So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Thank you. Something tells me this is going to be a beginning of a very long friendship, a very long working relationship. I'm so excited. Just to, like I said, take you back again, I heard you say touching the untouchable, working with these women, seeing the divine within them, those who are inflicted with AIDS and those whose lifestyle was not necessarily that of a desirable one. Women, you called it women surviving prostitution, not by choice, but for survival. What a way of framing it. And the way I was thinking about it, listening to you talk about systems thinking, is that they are part of the system. They're within the system of society. They are women, they're people, they're children. They're part of that, the whole nest of society. And yes, it from a distance, from face value, maybe untouchable, maybe undesired, maybe, you know, you use the word taboo in so many ways, right? So take us a little bit into that world of yours, working with those that were struggling with AIDS, those that were in the lifestyle of prostitution. What drove you to that? Where was that passion, compassion, empathy was coming from? And what was it like to actually have a network of 5,000 women being able to see a better life?
I think to this day, I'll never have such a amazing experience. And I'm so grateful for all of them. And you know what? Many of them, I'm still in touch with them today. So when I go to Addis, whoever has still the number working, we still meet and we go eat kutfu. And I just love it. They're very loving. These women, when we go in the night to see them, to provide them counseling or to provide them prevention, like condoms and things like that, they make for us misrot and they'll add whatever meat is in there. They will give us whatever they have and they share. They're so generous. And they're only doing this because they have no other way of earning a living. There's always a story behind. There's always a story behind. But yet the society judges them, calls them with a very bad word I'm not going to say. Our society is willing to forgive a murderer, right? But we're not willing to forgive and bring back these women. Yeah, we point fingers. Why? Why? They're human beings, just as we are. And one of the sad things, the younger ones that I work with, and they were mainly around nearby Gion Hotel. There's another group there. And they would say, you know, they never refer to rape as rape. And they would just say, oh, the client yesterday used me for free. I find that so sad. You have men who go in there sometimes. One person might go in there, but then there's like 3 guys hiding under the bed. And then It's terrible. And these women have fallen through the cracks of the system, and they can't get help. So when we talk about systems thinking and when we talk about unity in a nation, it's about saying we are together, no matter who you are, what you do, what is your ethnicity or gender or religious belief, we are one. There's a beautiful example that we can take from South Africa with all the problems that South Africa has. It's called the Rainbow Nation. You know why? Because every single South African will first say, I'm South African, before they say whatever ethnicity they might be. So what I've learned with these women is they're very resilient, they're very generous, they're very kind, they don't share their pain, they do what they do. There was one young lady that I knew in particular, and she would tell her brothers, her parents died, and she had 3-4 brothers to take care of, and she started doing this work. And when she goes out at night, she would tell them, I'm going to night school, I'm doing uni in the evening, just so she can bring money to buy food the next day. And this is the woman that we judge as a society. This is the woman we judge. I mean, we can talk a lot about it, including in the medical service. Do they even get medical service? You can't get medical service unless you have an ID card. And you can't have an ID card unless you have an address. And you can't have an address unless you're legally renting. Do you see how it's like a... So our program started with HIV/AIDS prevention, but later on then had to include livelihood, income generating, reintegration into the society. And that's why I loved working with Philippe and Betty and the rest of the team that joined, because we had free range to be creative. And MSF is such an organization that they listen to what's needed on the ground. They're not stuck to policy. So if you can show your case that this is needed, they're going to support you, make it happen. And I wish many organizations, be it UN agencies, other international organizations, or government public office, would have the same pragmatism when we're trying to do development work. Because in development work, I feel that right now, I mean, not just right now, we've been talking a lot. We've done a lot as well, but I'm missing pragmatic approach. Get it done. Get it done. Let's talk less and let's do more. Let me pause here.
Thank you so much. I mean, I could listen to you all day. You're touching a lot of stuff. Yes, if one part of the machine isn't working, the entire machine is defected. And that's what it is. This is the system thinking that you're talking about. Dr. Yene, so amazing experience to think about part of that system that society tries to pretend it doesn't exist, kind of shunned and set aside, labeled. We could call it all kinds of things. So enough testing of the wine from your journey. Someday I'll get to maybe talk to you and have you tell us the entire story. What I would like to do now is have you share with us what was it like to listen to Mr. Fouad's biography, listening to him, what reflections came to mind? I know you're touching on some of it. I'm going to give him a moment to also interject here. But going back to his journey, he has become quite the humanitarian as we know it. We have not known about him for this many years since his biography. He has become the icon behind the name humanitarian. He has given his entire life to this humanitarian work to the degree that, honestly, when I listen to his biography, is there any other story he can tell other than being a humanitarian, right? So what was it like for you to listen to his biography? What reflection do you have? And then maybe towards the end, we can talk about a reflection and what message comes out of that. So unless Mr. Fouad, you want to jump in now, you can, or Dr. Yene can continue.
No, Yene, continue, and then we will go through exchanging ideas on what you will be saying.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I was so touched by the interview. Fouad and I, we know each other. There's people who were not even born when we met. Yeah, the 96 is a long time.
Yeah.
And I knew most of the story, but not everything. And it touched my heart. And I felt it, my heart ached. You know, my heart ached. I was watching and listening. And I wish I was there in person to just, you know, hold hand or something to say, I hear you. I hear you. I appreciate you. And I feel also what you're feeling. And I just hope and wish and trust that it's God who's just covered you until now so that you can be who you are, how you serve. At times, I believe that when God has a mission, he puts us in a context to be able to serve that mission. And at times, we might not understand our circumstances, why we're there. But it's not our place to try to understand. Our place is just to trust that whatever it is, but I'm going to move forward and I'm going to let God guide me. So with all the hardship that Fouad went through at the beginning of his life, would anybody be surprised if he was in a hospital somewhere or just somewhere on the street? Nobody would be surprised. Everybody would say, yeah, well, he had a hard time. Yeah. So that would have been the expected, the default. But it was otherwise because God had another plan. And believe you me, because Fouad has seen, felt, experienced pain in all different ways, he is able to empathize with others in a way that is so, I've never seen it. I've never seen it. It's not to help somebody to help. He actually feels it. He will tell you when you're not okay, even before you acknowledge that you're not okay. He can sense it. And he doesn't hold back from stepping forward and supporting whoever he needs to support, whether it's a friend, not a friend, somebody on the street, somebody he doesn't even know. And for me, in the early years when we met and I was trying to get back and work in Ethiopia, which was hard, I did the best I could, but I also experienced my share of challenges, and he was my go-to person. So every day almost around 4:30, 5 o'clock, I would go to his office to just chat, be heard, get advice, be understood. And he was one of the few who was my peer who could understand me and who could give me guidance and clarity about how to move forward. So for the videos, I can only say, I was actually telling Fouad, we should really consider about making just a one-piece documentary because it's lessons in there, lessons about humility, about humanity, about competence, commitment, purpose. That it's all there. So I really appreciate you, Mame, and Independent Voice, for what you have produced. And Fouad, you know, I appreciate you and I feel so blessed that you're in my life. Over.
Yeah.
Wow. I don't even want to say anything. So, Mr. Fouad, go for it.
Yeah, she gets you, you know. No, but at least with Yene, we also were there together, so we know what we're talking about, and that's why you're here. That's another way also to show the world, show the youngsters, we still are here, we're still happy, we still appreciate each other, we love each other, but we've been also there in the fire. When you talk about those girls, women, I remember so vividly, not only in the community, but even in the office, how people were denigrating the job that you were undertaking. And that's why now I'm so happy that the three of us were discussing about this, because Mami now is part of the family because she knows better my biography than me myself, you know. So the thing is, while we're doing such things, and I hope, as Mame said, we will be continuing, because there's so much yet to unfold and bring to surface, so that many others could tap in and maybe take also some routes that they were not considering before. And to come back to our current world, because what we're talking about is 96, it's very, very long back. But you see, what we're talking about applies still now, because the world has not changed, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. We were idealistic in those days, and we went there saying we are going to change the world. And that was our vibe. That's why I talked about a storm coming into my office when you get in there, because it was pairing, it was matching. And instead of me being alone, trying to drag the others, I was having all of a sudden another horse, that will tract the whole thing. And that's what we have also to say to our own people, to the youngsters, that when we have havoc, like the one we are having in our country, let's not dwell only on the differences and the discourses and the narratives that we're hearing. As you rightly and very beautifully said it, if there is a problem, then do something about it, not talk, you see, because that's what is happening today. But if everyone goes to the very thing that each and everyone can contribute, we can change the situation. And that is where this kind of discussion is very important, because the tiny bit with which you started, you remember, it was only in one corner in Piazza area, with few girls, and even going there was dangerous. And then down the road, it ended up with 5,000 people and a communication nationwide, on radio, on TV, on newspapers. One person and few collaborators. So imagine if we were 1,000 doing the same thing all around Ethiopia, Ethiopia wouldn't be at this level now. Today, we are millions in talking about the differences, the bloods and the wars, etc. Instead of that, if we were, all of us, focusing on one type of project to be addressed, what terrible change we would have brought in, you see? So that's where I wanted to interject. Back to you, Mami.
Thank you. Like, my brain is racing right now. I don't know which way even to go, because you both are unfolding like this huge onion, like you just peel that one thing and then there is another thing, and then you peel it out and then you're like, okay, so I want to say that too. What I wanted to do right now really is, in a nutshell, what we're saying is, let's not underestimate the power of one. I mean, it's not a cliche, right? Let's not underestimate the power of one. One was able to pay attention to, was willing to have that empathy. One was willing to reach out and touch that untouchable. One was willing to look at that one that nobody else wanted to look at, the one group, the one section, that one little corner. Let me tell you, we released it looks like the final version of the biography for Mr. Fouad, and it was the Amharic version of it, and a couple friends came, and we were doing the same thing. And what we had talked about, and I think his last remark, and that resonated really, really so strongly, was, in everything that we do, we should have that humanitarian corner. That was your humanitarian corner we just identified. That was that humanitarian corner that people tried not to see or pretend as though it didn't exist. But the corner of Piazza existed. Anywhere and everywhere else you guys went, it existed. Whether we accepted it, whether we acknowledged it, whether we feel some type of way, that corner existed. And few was willing to take a look at it, reach out and touch it. You said the divine within them, that humanness within them, that empathy that went beyond the surface and tried to see there's got to be a story behind it. And that story was the driving force for you all. I'm going to ask one question and then we'll maybe have a little bit discussion on that too. So as Mr. Fouad said, just listening to him talk about his biography, I feel like I know a lot from what he had said, right? I can make the connection. And then I see you, and I've talked to a few of his friends, his colleagues. Every one of you guys come and say almost the same thing, in a sense that his passion, the dedication, and all that. And you know what really is fascinating to me? There is this notion, I don't know if it's just for us Africans or anywhere else, well-to-do people that have a good job, educated people that can live life anywhere, whichever way they please to, decided to do this work. Why? I mean, it's not the most glamorous. It's not the most coveted thing to do, right? Dr. Yene, you could have led such a different life, very comfortable one, completely different. Can you talk about why? I'm going to come to Dr. Yene first, and I'm going to give Mr. Fouad a minute too, even though he said quite a bit. I'm sure he has yet another layer that he can unfold. So Dr. Yene, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mame, for that question. Before I go there, I just want to make 2 points on the previous one, is that when we talk about humanitarian and the power of one, you know, Ethiopia is a humanitarian nation. By default, as a people, we have been humanitarian from throughout our history. It's part of who we are. And that's what we need to recall again. Our elders, if you look back, they're the ones who set the example. And that's the spirit we need to bring back. The reason why I mentioned this is that, you know, when we talk about the why, I think, again, going back to the generation that Fouad and I are, we have a nostalgia of our country, either that we imagined or that's real. I don't really know yet, but I cannot not do anything in Ethiopia. My heart, it's not possible. And so it was a calling. It was to say, I'm going back. And in another conversation, I'll share with you from where I went back. And now you'll think, no, I really am crazy. Because it was a very comfortable life. But I couldn't not go, especially when we talk about HIV/AIDS. And I felt that, you know what, I think I could do something about this, even at a small scale. I just felt. And I just followed my gut feeling and I went. And I never regretted it. It's because in our heart, and Fouad, you can add to it, we love our country so much. We love our people so much that my pain, even to this day, is not being able to serve my country even more. That is the biggest burden pain that I have. I go all around the world doing many things. And what brings me heartache is to say, but when will I do this for my people? You know? Mm-hmm. So it's because we're called for and we love our country, and there's that thing that squeezes your heart that you can't refuse. You just have to go do it.
Mr. Fouad.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Yene, and I will add to it the fact that we had to leave our motherland obliged to leave. We didn't leave willingly and going for something and coming back home. We were forced to leave. So that cut is a reminder at the back of your mind every day that you leave abroad, every day. That's first. Second, before we left, we've seen the damages that civil war, revolution can bring about on people, but also the destruction on the nation. That is also another ache that is unbearable. You can't digest it. So abroad, every time that you grow yourself with education, with people that you encounter, you want to bring that evolution into you for the better, there, back home, where things were destroyed, because that image remains at the back of your mind. So that is the first drive that brings us there to make the difference. Then we were talking with Yene over the phone, and we were also doing our own evaluation of those many years of friendship, brotherly, sisterlyhood. And at some point, Yene was telling me, and sorry for revealing this, Yene, in all what I did so far, what I would like to do now is to go back to spirituality and learn more about the relation with God. And I interjected there and I said, you know what? Yes, you can do that. Of course, it's beautiful. But God had already worked through you. So what we were doing, we were not only us as individuals who were doing it. God, in his mercy, works through his kids to do the good for his own other kids who are suffering. So that was also one very big angle that was a cornerstone in my life. And then the other thing, as Yene also was saying it, where she used to be in Belgium, she was in comfortable life. Why were we comfortable where we were? And Mami is the same in the United States. It's because the rule of law functions where we are right now. There, back home, the rule of law has got challenges. Some steal, some are corrupt, some are not doing their job for which they are hired. And that's what complicates also a lot of things. You remember going to the Ministry of Health in those days was the biggest headache of our life. Going to Piazza, to that small place where the girls and women were suffering, was the easiest for us, because there is no corruption. There is no administrative bias, you see? So that correction that we have to bring from what we learned here, that the rule of law should function, that is an obligation. When you drive a car, on a daily basis, you are reminded that there is a stop, there is a red light, and if you don't respect it, you are fined. In Ethiopia, no, you're not fined. That the guy that should stop you from doing that harm is asking you for money. It's corruption. So the rule of law is not functioning anymore. That's also something you want to bring back home and say things should be worked like this. And the fourth and the last one that I want to mention, and this is where I would like us to have further discussion in link with the systems thinking, leadership, and what we have been discussing with Mame so far, which is ethics and humanitarianism in the world order, is that currently I have the impression that we have lost morale, values, and principles. And I think it's about time that all of us, those who had the chance to learn about these things further, bring back those things where we have lost it. And I was talking with Mami, when we saw on media that there were people who could now do atrocious things in our country, something that is not in our culture. Something, you see, Yene, you have spoken about, we are naturally humanitarian in Ethiopia. It's true, it's true. But where is it now? Because what we hear is not what you said, but we grew up in that humanitarian spirit long time ago. That loss of value, morale, and principles is another big chunk of dimension that we have to bring back home and within our communities who are divided. This is where I want us now to focus in our debate, because we have so many examples that we can cite. Thank you. I yield my mic.
Thank you so much. It's just an amazing conversation that we're having, and I know we're going to have to make few of them. I'm sure our listeners are going to go, oh, I want them to say more about this, or we want to say more about that, because we really are going back to where it all started and what it was like, and listening to you guys talking about the humanitarian aspect of it and the loss that we're suffering right now. The biggest loss is, to me, the fear of God. What happened to that? You know, we can talk about systems thinking, and that makes sense. Mr. Fouad mentioned, so why do we see the things that we're seeing right now? How do we get to the point from us saying Ethiopia is by virtue a humanitarian society, but then we're witnessing somebody going out there slitting somebody's throat? Where is that coming from? So it's not just where is it coming from, what have we lost is the bottom line. So what would be a quick message to the listeners to this generation? A quick message, and then we'll wrap up. Dr. Yene.
In terms of a short message, is that for young people, is to know that you have many years ahead of you to do good work. But don't be fooled by seeing the number of years you have ahead, because life is short.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I was 10. I remember when I was 15. I remember when I was 17. Whew, it's gone. So live with intention, wake up, be awake, aware, be curious, and be consistent. So think of the long run. Listen to your heart. What do you think would make you happy if you achieved it? What would you feel guilty to get paid for? That's your profession. So think of the long run and live in the present. That's how you keep, creating a future that's going to take you to that horizon. And don't be afraid about being validated or not by others. If you follow your heart, you don't need anybody's validation. That's my message to the youth. Over to you.
Wow. Incredible. Mr. Fouad.
Very beautifully said, and I wouldn't expect less, Now, if we have to give a message, and that's why I was bringing back the whole discussion into what did we miss down the road, and Mame has expressed it very nicely and clearly. So having a guest, a honorable guest like Dr. Yene, who had gone through, of course, her own journey, but specialized into systems thinking from the perspective of leadership. I would dwell on that after this excellent exchange that we had, to tell not only the young generation, but all the leaders of the world as well, because we are current. We're here today, tomorrow we're gone. So it's now that we have to think about the system that we call world order. This world order can only function in the right direction when it will be inclusive. That's number one. Second, for our compatriots, young and older, the system, as we just spoke about it, like I was hinting to our body consider it as Ethiopia. If this is Ethiopia, you take my arm away, my leg away, my brain away, and each one of them will not function separately. You unite them and it becomes me. I will remain Ethiopia. So please do what Yene just said. Be passionate. Be integral, because we wanted to link the systems thinking, leadership, and ethics. Be humane, the humanitarian part. Think about those we are missing, losing. Think about those who are still suffering, and focus on healing that instead of bringing additional havoc through division, Only our unity will bring us further and make the world respect us further. Thank you. I yield my mic.
Thank you so much. As you can see, this is very powerful, and the world of Africa is getting darker right over there. It's just so beautiful. We'll wrap this up. Here is what I would say in closing. There's so much within the two of you. There's so much within the few people that I've gotten to listen to and have an opportunity to speak with, based on just one biography of an amazing human being. And what you had said, Dr. Yene and Mr. Fouad, I hope and I pray that people will take it to heart. And the way I want to close it, because it really, really resonates with me, and sometimes it makes me feel like this must be the craziest thing I try to hold on to, is don't wait for anybody to reassure, to validate anything. Not at all. You are one, and you are many in part, right? So at the end of the day, we all get to say, this is what I did with the life I was given. There will be a time, and there will be a point, and there will be an answer to be given to about the life that is given to all of us. And if we waited until somebody reassures us, somebody validates us, we're not going to be able to do much at all, because human nature says we tend to find faults and not necessarily strength. So look into your own strength and go for it. Thank you so much, Dr. Yene. Thank you so much, Mr. Fouad. This is incredible. This is amazing. Enjoy Africa. Thank you so much. I so appreciate it. On behalf of our listeners, Independent Voice, thank you for being here. And I look forward to other opportunities, because there is so much I can probe out of you, and there's so much that we can all learn from you. So I so appreciate it. Go do more. You're not done.